Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of the news called the Lucky Larry News. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everybody has got through half of their week in one piece hitherto. And I hope everybody has been keeping themselves nicely occupied, but not too occupied. And if you are being occupied a lot, then make sure it's more for yourself than somebody you're never going to see. Anyway, I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. I've had a busy few days as well, but it's been good. It's been productive. It's been time consuming, but it always seems to be. Recently, I've mentioned this in the last video I did a little while back called the Royal News, where it's like just very difficult to find the time to do anything. Honestly, it really is. Very, very bizarre. But that's the way it is. So, and one of the things I was taking my time out to do was yesterday, and that takes me straight to a shout out I'd like to make here to Ian Leahy. A big thank you to him. I made it this time. I didn't make the last one. I did come to the first one, but I didn't get to see the last one. But this time I did make it there. So thank you very much for that. Always great to see new faces, people you've never met before. So that was really, really encouraging, and also some of the conversations we were having. I couldn't stay too long, but yeah, it was good. Bit of networking, a few ideas, a bit of brainstorming, and certainly a couple of things to discuss next time around. And there's one or two things that we've got planned for the next meetup, which will, well, I'm sure Ian will announce it himself once he knows exactly how he's going to do it and stuff. But it will involve a bit more participation on behalf of the attendees. Let's just say it like that, but in a very positive way. So that was great. So I'm glad I went there. So big shout out to Ian Leahy, and of course the gang that organised the Flat Earth meetup in Swanage. As soon as I know the next date, I will post it and try and advertise it a little bit, do a bit of a promo or something like that. But I didn't do it this time around. It just came up on me. I suddenly got an email and I was like, blimey, it's already the end of September. And it is. So yeah, there we go. And also, by the way, I'd like to follow on from that and say hats off, a big hats off, seriously, to a friend whose name will remain anonymous, but they know who they are, for making that step. And, let's put it another way. When I first came across the idea myself that, hang on a minute, we might well be lied to here, and I am curious by nature, so I do prefer to, instead of just batting back whatever someone's telling me or just be argumentative about it, I'll go and have a look myself, which is kind of the reaction I was hoping I would get from people when I told them about stuff, but of course it never is. It's often just an adverse reaction for many reasons. We won't go into that here, but I do remember that it took a little bit of courage to then make that step of going somewhere with lots of other people, and also the idea of being able to speak freely in an environment with lots of people with this topic, because, the myth of us living in a free society is that's absolute nonsense. You can't talk about anything you want to. You can't. I've had experience of that, of being, treated treated wrongly or being misrepresented because somebody has simply had a disagreement or a difference of opinion or whatever, instead of like having a conversation, discussion about it and thinking about it and talking about it and all that, which is the way forward. Surely we all want that, don't we? Don't we all want to sort of kind of, I don't know, lessen the indoctrination on our kids? Do we not want that? I sure as hell do. But, you see it just recently. I was going to mention this a bit later on, but I may as well say it now. When we talk about indoctrination, all this nonsense with the asteroids and stuff, and I'd like to really implore people to, if you have never heard of it, look up the law of thermodynamics and look up in particular the second law of thermodynamics. It's a natural law, can't be tampered with, can't be argued with, unless you're promoting pseudoscience, which by definition is not real science, in which case you can throw anything in there, any slogan, anything you want to, mix it all into the pot, and people will just believe it because you've added the word science, even though it means nothing to do with science. Because if you look at the definition of science itself, it ain't that, right? But when we go back to that, when kids are learning this stuff, that we landed on the moon, that this, that the other happened, that we really did send a car out into space a couple of years ago, Musk and his cronies, right? And this, that, and the other. I mean, people do believe it. Swathes of people believe it. They roll with it. And for the life of me, I don't understand why no one's really taken a bit of a clue. I'd say no one's not fair, but, not as many people as I'd like or that I would expect. And it's very, very similar behaviours around that topic as it is around other topics that we've been occupied with over the last couple of years, right? Same response. Nosy to know what I'm thinking, but then when I approach my response to then respond, I get shut down. And, well, then don't ask me then if you're not interested. Or you just to argue, are you just going to be arguing? Do you want to know? Are you willing to? Let's learn together. Let's look together. Maybe I'm missing something. Great. I don't mind that dialogue. That sort of thing. So I take it personally when I know the schools are lying to my child. But I'm not accusing all teachers as being liars, right? So let's make that distinction. There is such thing as compartmentalization, because that's how it works. I've said it before, people in management level won't know what goes on in boardroom level. And so it goes on below, and so it goes on above. And it will be exactly the same thing with nonsense, space programs, etc., etc. You can hyper-simulate everything and make it so realistic that, just like the flight controller said, or the flight operator of 1969, what's his name, Krantz? I think he said in an interview once that you could have carried that all out in a simulation, which for me is code for we did do that. And nobody would have known the difference in the Space Center, because it's all on your TV screens, on your monitors. You're not seeing any footage of space. You've not got cameras dancing around in space where you're seeing everything and there's asteroids whizzing by you and all that. That's not happening. It's CGI based on the maths punched into systems. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. There is nothing of proof from outer space because it doesn't exist. And it took me a long time to get that. But one of the things that did help me was the understanding of entropy. You cannot have a gas pressure next to a vacuum, a pressure system, without there being a container or a barrier in between. There's a very good snippet. I've forgotten. I had it somewhere anyway. There's a professor at MIT who explained exactly. And he draws on a blackboard a box, puts a line down the middle, and he puts volume and he puts gas. And then he asks, what would happen if I remove the barrier between the two? Well, and the answer, the gas would fill the volume immediately. It's entropy. There's no exchange of energy or heat or anything like that. It's an immediate thing, right? We'd be dead. The rockets that went out there allegedly, or whatever it was, well, the gas would have followed. We'd all be dead immediately. You can't have a system that's got layers because, well, then how do you get the layers in the first place? You still got gas pressure. You can't have gas pressure without a container, right? And you need gas pressure to live, and you certainly can't have gas pressure next to an open, an ever-expanding vacuum. 10 to the minus 17 torr, I do believe it is. So go and look that up on the scale. It's a vacuum that cannot even closely be replicated here on Earth. Yet we send astronauts out there. Okay, would you do that with a submarine? Would you send a crew on a submarine into the deepest parts of the Atlantic without testing it first to make sure it's sealed? No, you would not. Very unlikely. No, not even unlikely. It just wouldn't happen. So there's lots of things to ponder when you start looking at it and thinking about it and using a bit of discernment, not just batting the ball back and going, well, yeah, ha, 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 and then plonking some sort of orthographic cartoon image as your response on social media, which is what happened to me recently when I posted something on there. So I'm going to leave a link in the description below and there'll be a video there, a link to a video from Richard Feynman, Feynman, that's right, I keep getting his name wrong. He discusses or explains in about 3 minutes the difference between mathematics and physics. And by the way, for those doubters out there, he's a professor, so you might take his word for it, because I'm not a professor. I don't have the qualifications, do I? I don't have a certificate on my wall, so I'm not entitled to, or am I just to be fobbed off and disregarded and not paid attention to at all? And that then pretty much disqualifies, 7 billion of us? More than that? Which isn't true, we don't have 7 billion. Right, so, there's a big knock-on effect to when you start looking at this a bit more closely. The implications, people's behaviours around it, So I'm going to do that. So first of all, shout out to my friend who made that step and all the rest of it. I did a bit of a full circle to come around to another person who's an old school friend who interacted with me a little bit on social media very, very recently. If he's watching this, I'm going to tag you in my post, and you can watch this video, and then hopefully you can watch the link in the description below, watch what the professor says, or pay attention to what he says, and then maybe take a look yourself and look at the explanation of how entropy works, because that, for a kickoff, pretty much kills it, that notion, right? And then we can get to brass tacks of the shape of the Earth itself and how we've been lied to about that, because everybody seems to keep pointing to the luminaries and the lights in the sky every time I talk about the shape, the terra firma bit. I don't know why that is. Well, I do know, but anyway, so there we have it on that one. I'll put the link in the description below. Give that a look. Yeah. So that's really what I just wanted to bring you, really. Just a quick overview and a quick couple of thanks regarding, the meetup yesterday, and also my old schoolmate. I don't have an issue with people getting a bit funny with me either, because I was very uncertain right at the beginning of looking at this myself. But one thing I never did, though, was mock anybody over it or insinuate a bit of mockery, because I'm not a big fan of contempt prior to investigation. That phrase you should be well aware of. And if you're not, but yet you want to discuss things to me or with me that you obviously know nothing about, well, fair enough. We both know where we stand then, don't we? All right, so yeah. And of course, there will be some of you who are watching this who will know all about this and stuff, about law, second law thermodynamics and this, that, and the other. But I don't, this is what I said about a couple of other things that happened over the last 2 years. Sometimes you have to revisit or stay around the vicinity of the real fundamental arguing points, because fine-tuning is great, and it's very important, of course, but there are a lot of people who do not know the basics. I know a lot of people who believe in the heliocentric model who don't even know the dimensions of Earth or all the different speeds that are supposed to be happening. The different trajectories, the corkscrewing effect, the fact that the sun is supposed to be hurtling through space at 500,000 miles an hour, and all that sort of stuff. They don't know that. They don't even know that. And yet they have the audacity to argue the point back and go, well, that's not true. That's not true. Why are you saying that? Why don't you take a closer look? Do a bit of research, proper research. I don't mean watch YouTube videos. I don't know where anybody's got that notion from. That's all that people do. It's total nonsense as well. Yet more mythology. Bit like the box that pops up under a flat earth video on YouTube. You'll see it there, the description of flat earth. An archaic concept. Talk about stacking it against you and not being a level playing field. This is what we're up against. There's a concerted effort to keep people quiet around it. There is. It's a huge lie. Just imagine the implications. Anyway, I was going off on a bit of a speech there. I felt very tempted to just talk a little bit, but running out of time. For now, anyway. Really, they're the two main points I wanted to bring to you. I hope I said them in some sort of cohesive fashion. That was really about it for the moment. I was also going to say, by the way, that my friend here, he's now called Larry. That's his name. Hence I called this episode Lucky Larry. I wanted to say it in homage of a very famous other Larry, who was very lucky by all accounts. If you don't know about him, do look him up. There will be many of you out there who do know about him. But yeah, I called him Lucky Larry. First of all, Larry, because I keep saying he's happy as Larry, and he's sick of it. So I'm just going to leave the he's happy as and just call him Larry. And the second reason, because he feels he's very lucky, because he swears to me that an asteroid nearly hit him on the head. We went for a walk a few days ago. I told him it was a chestnut. He doesn't believe me. He thinks he's lucky. I'll roll with that. All right. On that note, I hope you remain sane for the rest of the week. Keep your heads up, and don't let the buggers get you down and all that sort of stuff. I will put out another video soon. I will also do a video to do with some hidden history and things like that, and talk a bit more about the logistical impossibilities of creating or performing the building necessary to even think about constructing certain buildings that we see around us in the times that we're told. Like people who wear leather sandals and skirts, who pop over from remote countries, over mountain ranges, fight battles, can only use a bow and arrow, can't read and write because that didn't start to the 1850s, couldn't phone each other, couldn't do anything, no communication, don't know what they ate or don't know where they slept, don't know what they wore apart from their skirts and their sandals, and they traipsed across Europe, and then while traipsing across Europe, built cathedrals, monasteries, all sorts of stuff all around. It's just quite phenomenal. So yeah, if you believe that, that's great. I don't. It's nonsense. So I just keep doing videos on that topic, but I'll be focusing a bit more on that, the logistical part of it, because a lot of these buildings do show the same hallmarks, add-ons, mud flood, or the ground level having risen. And we're not just talking about buildings next to a road that might have been lifted to make the access to that building easier, probably because it goes further deep down in the ground, but also fields next to churches that clearly conceal a lot of the church. So it's not an engineering issue. It's definitely some sort of natural thing that happened that has been concealed from us, hence the backstory, and hence those lies for sure. All right, on that note, thank you very much for looking in, and I will see you all soon, some of you sooner. Until then, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from, I'll say it, shall I? Larry. Ta-ta for now.